Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. It is a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. On this episode of Woke by Accident podcast, I share an interview with Levi from the Forefront Radio and provide news updates in the Shanquella Robinson death and the 2019 death of Ronald Green from Louisiana.
Whatever other religion thing, that's not the point. The point is there's a issue in America where there is a certain apathy towards life. There's an apathy towards decency. There's an apathy towards loving one another. There's so much tension that doesn't need to take place where people decide to use violence as a means to murder people, especially kids, you know?
Yo guys, this is Olufemi from the Sample Lounge, and you're listening to the Woke by Accident podcast.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. Welcome. I first want to acknowledge the mini break that we had. It was unexpected, but thanks for allowing me to take much needed time to kind of focus on some things, working on a new side business venture. And so really excited about that. And just had a lot of irons in the fire for the last week or so. But back in effect for sure to give you some great content and to tackle some additional topics that you probably will find useful. So on this episode, I will bring a interview that I had with Levi from the Forefront Radio. We'll include that at the end of the episode. I apologize for the sound quality in advance. We had some technical difficulties, and so my sound doesn't sound as great as his with his great microphone and such. But we made it work, and I do want to share the information that we covered concerning the Nashville school shooting that recently occurred. Since then, we've had some additional shootings and things like that, but there are two other stories that I wanted to bring to your attention first. This first story that I wanted to discuss with you guys is about Shanquella Robinson. You may recall we did discuss this story before. Shanquella Robinson died on October 29th, 2022 in Cabo San Lucas. She was from Charlotte, North Carolina, and a college student who attended Winston-Salem State University in North Carolina. She took this trip to Mexico, staying in the luxury rental property with several acquaintances from the U.S., and she sadly did not return. Several news reports showed a disturbing video which showed a very brutal fight which resulted in her death. We later learned that the Mexican authorities were pursuing this matter as a case of femicide, which is a homicide against a female. And the family has been waiting on answers essentially ever since. And so the latest update, which was shared today, is that federal prosecutors informed the family of Shanquella Robinson that the evidence they have isn't enough for prosecution in Robinson's death last year. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle and Western Districts of North Carolina reported this information as of Wednesday. Based on the results of the autopsy and a careful deliberation and review of the investigative materials by both U.S. Attorney offices, federal prosecutors informed Ms. Robinson's family that the evidence does not support a federal prosecution. The family members are deeply disappointed in this decision, but they are not deterred and plan to seek justice for Robinson. And this information was relayed to CNN from their attorney, Sue Ann Robinson. And it's just very odd. They reference the death certificate, which references the cause of death, which was a severe spinal cord injury and atlas lutation, which is instability or excessive movement of the uppermost neck vertebrae. And the document also states that she was found unconscious in the living room of the rental residence on October 29th. And it referenced the death being accidental or violent, and the time frame between the injury and her death, which was approximately 15 minutes. The video is referenced. And then there's several individuals who were present during this time. So you just really wonder what led to this decision not to pursue the matter further. So get very sad for the family there. Hopefully they can pursue justice against the individuals on the U.S. side or in some other capacity. I also want to share an update in another story that we covered in the past. The incident was concerning Ronald Greene from Louisiana. The situation with Ronald Greene occurred on May 10th of 2019. Ronald Greene died as a result of 5 officers beating, choking, and dragging him in an incident that started with being pulled over. The horrible thing about this case, which was in Monroe, Louisiana, is that Ronald Greene's family was told a lie about how he died. His family was told that he died after crashing his car into a tree. And so, the truth is that he was beaten and dragged and, incurred this horrible amount of police brutality, which was actually caught on body camera footage. The Greene family did file a wrongful death suit in 2020 and are latest, and as a result, 4 of the Louisiana State Police troopers and the 1 Union Parish sheriff deputy did face charges including negligent homicide. 5 of these officers pled not guilty to their charges in connection to the fatal arrest of Ronald Greene. The 4 Louisiana State Police troopers and the 1 Union Parish sheriff deputy were arraigned last Tuesday, 5 months after the grand jury slammed them with the charges including obstruction, malfeasance, which include obstruction of justice, and the most serious charge, negligent homicide. So even with the body camera footage, they've pled not guilty. So that is very interesting. So we'll see what, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in this case, because not only did they commit this egregious act of violence, which was caught on camera, they totally tried to cover it up, mislabeling the camera footage, telling his family a different version of events, which was not true. Just several details in this case demonstrate how they tried to cover their tracks. And so it's just really appalling that, this is a law enforcement organization pulling these shenanigans. I mean, obviously we shouldn't be surprised. We've seen these types of actions from the police. It's just shocking as a law-abiding citizen who wants to believe in truth and justice and doing the right thing, and the police is supposed to protect you. You're supposed to want to call the police and feel that they will protect you. You know, it's disturbing to hear these types of things. So definitely want to stay on this story. They've pled not guilty to all of these charges in light of, and actually the video is out there on YouTube if you care to watch it. This is the matter of Ronald Green, who died as a result of his encounter with the police, which resulted in his death on May 10th of 2019 outside of Monroe, Louisiana. So we'll have additional updates because this trial is going to be really interesting.
All right. Let's have a quick discussion on the Nashville school shooter. I believe this application allows you to only go on for about 30 minutes or so to an hour. So that'll give us enough time to kind of just chop it up and discuss it and everything. So let's get into this discussion real quick. You sent me a article about 4 big questions related to the Nashville school shooting and what we know so far. Do you want to go ahead and go over that briefly?
Yeah, and before we get started, we definitely want to acknowledge just a moment of silence for the individuals who lost their life. On that day, there were 3 children and 3 adults. So just wanted to acknowledge the loss of life of those individuals as a result of this sad tragedy. Thank you. So to have a discussion about the accused shooter, who the police have identified at this point as Audrey Hale, who was responsible for this sad tragedy. And Hale, who was 28, used the pronouns of him, he, according to authorities, and was a former student of the school, had attended when she was a child. The shooter left behind a manifesto that included a map of the school with details about how she would enter and carry out the attack. And then also, which is interesting to point out, is that this information is coming from NPR. The shooter has legally purchased 7 guns, 7 firearms from 5 local gun stores just before the attack, and 3 of those weapons were used. As some of you all saw in the video, the shooter took down the door, very dramatically when they initially entered, carrying 2 large rifles. And so it also goes on to state that the shooter, Hale, was under doctor's care for emotional disorder. But law enforcement knew nothing about the treatment. It's also important to note that in some states, red flag laws empower law enforcement to confiscate weapons from individuals due to mental illness or concerns of relatives. We saw in another shooting, the one in St. Louis, the family had contacted authorities to have weapons taken from that individual, they ended up giving them back. So, that's maybe a missed opportunity here.
A lot of times when these events take place, I find it strange that many of these people have manifestos, writing term papers in regards to what was their thoughts on these acts that they wanted to commit. And it is sad that we live in a society where people think that the best way to deal with issues or concerns that they have is to do it via violence. And we need to find a way to present this information in a way that's palatable for viewers, because I know with IG and other things, there are sensitive viewers to this type of information. My deepest condolences to the individuals that have suffered through these things. But let's be honest, this is America. America started itself in violence, and it looks like it's going to end in violence because so many of these acts keep happening. I remember, Jen, we had a discussion maybe a couple of months ago where we were going over like mass shootings and how it was right during the time of the Buffalo shooting. You remember that back in May? And it was disconcerting to see that although that particular story was broadcasted, people don't realize that these events are happening on a daily basis. Like mass shootings are literally happening on a daily basis. It's not that they're one-off instances. Like you can literally go to Wikipedia right now and find several different stories popping up state by state, city by city, all throughout the United States. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. I want to say that there's been about, according to the New York Times, 130 mass shootings as of March. So, I mean, we haven't talked about the Walmart shootings and things like that. You know, some of the bars, the nightclubs. There's so many. I don't know if the pandemic is a factor. Obviously, you know, people are experiencing mental instability and not having the proper outlets for their feelings and such. But this, you know, recent one with this Nashville shooting just really kind of hit home with involving such small children and, you know, just innocent folks that, you know, no one deserves this. But, you know, it's just really alarming when you have, parents and such and who have children. And you want to know, like, how can I be safe? How can I, what do I tell my children and things like that? And so I think it's important to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Going into what you were mentioning earlier about like the motivations and the emotional disturbances, I wanted to touch briefly on what was written in the Times article about it. The New York Times had an article called Nashville Shooting. Police say shooter was under doctor's care for emotional disorder. Okay. It says authorities were still searching for a motive behind the attack, which killed 6 people, including 3 children at the Christian Elementary School. Here's what you know. The 28-year-old assailant used 3 guns, like you mentioned earlier, Jen. It says the close-knit community at the Covenant School is struggling with the enormity of the loss. Body cam footage shows officers racing through the school to find the shooter. The shooter had posted on Facebook in recent years about the death of a romantic partner, a former teacher says. Nashville shooting response draws comparison to Uvalde. If you remember, there was a situation that happened in Uvalde, Texas, which is close to San Antonio, where a similar incident happened with a school shooter. Then it says surveillance videos show how shooter entered the school. A lot of times when these events happen, they talk about emotional disorder amongst these people. Let's see what happened. It says, the assailant who killed 6 people at Christian Elementary School in Nashville had legally purchased 7 firearms recently, including the 3 used in the shooting, and was treated for emotional disorder. Emotional disorder. So now, Jen, what medical literature have you read that just talks about an event just being a quote-unquote emotional disorder? Have you ever come across that? Because I haven't. So I'm still like confused as to why there's no official diagnosis. Is it some sort of psychosis? Is it schizophrenia? Is it,
There's several different, options it could be. I'm looking at an ABC article that mentions a childhood friend saying that Hale spoke of being depressed. And so, if this individual was depressed, then, there's several levels of that, and levels being on the manic side and things like that. And so, unfortunately, the shooting was a result of, not getting the proper attention and things like that. One difference that I'm noticing with, like you mentioned, the Buffalo shooter, where he was kind of described as a loner and things like that, this individual seemed to have, something going for themselves. Recently graduating from the college art design school in Nashville, which, that young man had just graduated too, or was 20. to graduate, and apparently had interest in being a graphic designer and things like that. It had family and friends, so you know, slipped through the cracks, or a missed opportunity for sure to not have these needs met that they clearly had. Needs, mental health needs that were not addressed. Um, and also, I think it was documented that the family knew the shooter possessed a firearm. So if they knew that something was going on, mental wise, maybe they could have spoke up about getting the firearm taken away, because you can reach out to authorities if you know someone who has a firearm and they're showing signs of being mentally unstable. I know where you were trying to go with that, but I mean, you can't really predict something like this. A lot of people have those kind of mental unstable feelings, and they don't get attention. This person had started on the path of being seen by a doctor, and apparently they veered off somewhere, and they just, I don't know if they snapped or what have you, but we're seeing this a lot.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Sometimes there is some sort of psychological disorder that's there within some individuals, and some individuals are just more prone to violent behaviors. There is a link in certain articles, like, for example, Psychiatry Online said that there was a link of several types of psychotropic medications that contributed to violent behavior toward others, as well as documented cases in a recent study of the medications that are strongly linked to violent behavior, such as smoking cessation aid, varenicline, I believe it is, and other antidepressants, regardless of the class. So, yes, there are links between people being depressed, taking medication, and violent behavior, but also on another hand, I don't want to make excuses for people. Mm-hmm. Having a mental illness is not an excuse to behave in a way where you jeopardize the lives of individuals, especially those they're not here. But the fact that they decided to deal with whatever issues that they had, whatever qualms that they had through violence, I take offense to that. I take offense to that. When we as a nation of people get upset, we should not resort to violence, especially going into schools, harming children and innocent people. I know there was a brother that was there, a janitor, and my thoughts and prayers are for his family and his loved ones, because this person that committed this act should not own weapons. They shouldn't have it in their possession, period. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to, is the solution legislation directed at gun control, things like that. I mean, because basically someone who is 18 years old, as long as they don't have any prior law offenses, they can purchase guns. We've seen this time and time again, even recently with these recent mass shootings, them acquiring a weapon even the day before, and things like that. And so it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to as these elections come up. I have an election coming up this Tuesday. These smaller elections are what matter, because you can, have your voice heard on things like gun control and different laws that can make an impact in these cases. I mean, you might think it's small, but it's, related depending on what's on the ballot at your time.
Right, definitely. And I don't want to hide behind church or state in the sense of how some people try to politicize these different things and make it a Democrat versus Republic thing, or Christian versus whatever other religion thing. That's not the point. The point is there's a issue in America where there is a certain apathy towards life. There's an apathy towards decency. There's an apathy towards loving one another. There's so much tension that doesn't need to take place, where people decide to use violence as a means to murder people, especially kids, you know. So that's all I wanted to touch on with this brief discussion. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on regarding this?
No, that's great. I appreciate you inviting me on to have a conversation. You know, definitely thoughts and prayers to all of the victims involved for sure, and appreciate it, Levi.
All right, all praises. So this was Jen by Woke by Accident. Jen, would you leave some of your social media and your talk about your podcast briefly?
For sure. Again, I'm Jen Washington, the host and creator of Woke by Accident podcast, and it's streaming on all major platforms, including my website, which is www.wokebyaccident.net, and on Instagram, the handle for the podcast is at Woke by Accident Podcast. Reach out, guys. Thank you.
All praises. Jen has a wonderful podcast talking about social events. We appreciate everyone listening to the live discussion in regards to the Nashville school shooter. Thank you for listening to The Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Afiel Levi Israel. Tune in on the next episode that will air weekly.
At this time, we're going to go ahead and conclude the episode. We greatly appreciate you listening. We invite you to follow us on social media. On Instagram, it is Woke by Accident Podcast. On Twitter, it is Woke by. On Facebook, it is Woke by Accident Podcast. We also have the new website up, www.wokebyaccident.net. Please check us out. And also follow us on all of your favorite streaming platforms. And please leave a review and share feedback. You can also reach out by Gmail, wokebyaccident@gmail.com. And every time you listen, we appreciate it so much. Thank you for listening and take care.